Good morning to wherever you're joining us from. I'm Gordon Mosley, reporting for News Source this morning. And this morning we're reporting on the U.S. Government, the U.S. military carrying out strikes in Venezuela early this morning. We've been following that story since around just after 2 o'clock this morning. And the U.S. President, Donald Trump, has announced that the Venezuelan President, Nicolas Maduro, has been captured and flown out of Venezuela. And we're seeing scenes coming in from some of the news organizations covering the story right now. You're seeing the Al Jazeera talking about the capturing of Maduro. So we're going to be also looking at that this morning. But here's what the US President, Donald Trump, was saying a bit earlier. He said the United States has successfully carried out a large-scale strike against Venezuela and its leader, President Nicolas Maduro, who has been, along with his wife, captured and flown out of the country. He said the operation was done in conjunction with the U.S. law enforcement, and details will follow. The U.S. President Donald Trump promising a press conference a bit later on today at 11 o'clock this morning at Mar-a-Lago. That's his estate in Florida. So that's what he had to say. I spoke earlier this morning, too, with President Irfan Ali. And President Irfan Ali told me that Guyana has been monitoring the situation all morning. He said the priority is the safety and security of our country, Guyana. President Ali also saying the Defense Board, the leadership of the GDF, and the security forces are fully mobilized in accordance with the Guyana security plans. He said, we have spoken to the Secretary General of CARICOM, and as more information becomes available, we will further update the population. And the President's office are releasing some images this morning. This is one of the images that came into us this morning from the President's office. You're seeing in this photograph them speaking with some members of the Guyana military while also monitoring the situation in Venezuela. You see President Irfan Ali there. I see Prime Minister, no, I'm sorry, I'm seeing the Home Affairs Minister, Onish Walren there, along with the former Home Affairs Minister, Robeson Ben, who is currently serving as an advisor to the Ministry of Home Affairs. The Prime Minister, Mark Phillips, is also seated there, as well as the head of the National Security Intelligence Agency, the head of the National Intelligence Agency, also there this morning, along with other members of the top brass of the GDF and the joint services this morning. So this is what has been happening locally as Guyana has been monitoring the situation. Of course, you know, there has been concern with what could happen when this situation goes on, whether we will see a further influx of Venezuelans coming to Guyana. But the U.S. carried out an early morning attack just after 2 o'clock this morning. And by 5 o'clock, the U.S. president was announcing that it was successful and that Maduro and his wife were flown out of the country. Now, it's not too clear when they say flown out of the country, if they mean flown to a U.S. territory, if they mean taken into exile, or what. But you remember when Maduro was wanted or is wanted in the U.S. for drug trafficking and other charges, it is more than likely that he was flown to a U.S. territory where he might be taken to the U.S. Eventually to face those serious drug trafficking charges. The U.S. has been carrying out military strikes across the Caribbean over the past several months. And for those of you and those of us who have been following that, they've been carrying out these strikes on suspected drug boats in the Caribbean. And some of those strikes, as we've been following, has resulted in the deaths of more than 100 people. So the situation is ongoing. Let's take a look of what was happening earlier today. These videos coming in from Caracas, where the U.S. was carrying out its military operation early this morning. These were videos sent to news organizations, and some of them were also shared on social media, showing the gravity of these attacks. Persons ran out of their homes, ran out of buildings, because it was not quite clear where exactly were being specifically targeted. And so you saw All of this taking place early this morning by the U.S. military. The strike beginning just after 2 o'clock this morning or thereabouts. And it is an ongoing story. We're monitoring it from all angles. The Venezuelan government, in a statement this morning, declared a state of emergency. And so we've been also tracking that situation. And they're saying they have the right to defend themselves. But the defense minister, he put an earlier statement. He's saying all armed forces will be deployed. That coming from the defense minister of Venezuela. His name is Vladimir Padrino Lopez. He called for a united front of resistance in face of what he called the worst aggression ever against Venezuela. He said Venezuela was following Maduro's orders that all armed forces be deployed. And quoting him directly, he said, "They have attacked us, but they will not subdue us." The defense minister, they were also calling for people to take the streets in Venezuela, and they're asking people to come out and be part of what they say will be a resistance to the U.S. military action. But the U.S. president, as I reported moments ago, announced that they've already captured Maduro. This coming from U.S. President Donald Trump early this morning. I'm going to repeat it for you. The United States of America has successfully carried out a large-scale strike against Venezuela and its leader, President Nicolas Maduro, who has been, along with his wife, captured and flown out of the country. The operation, Trump said, was done in conjunction with U.S. law enforcement, and details will follow. He said there will be an 11 o'clock news conference at Mar-a-Lago, which is his estate out in Florida. President Irfan Ali, as I also mentioned earlier, said that Guyana is monitoring the situation and making it clear that the priority is the safety and security of the country. He said the defense board, the leadership of the GDF, and the security forces are fully mobilized in accordance with Guyana's security plans. He said he has spoken to the Secretary General of CARICOM on the issue, and more information will be made public as that information comes in. Of course, you know, CARICOM has been expressing its concern about the situation that has been taking place in the region. The CARICOM Secretariat has expressed concern, saying that the region is a zone of peace. It wants it to remain that way, a zone of peace. And so they would be worried about what has essentially escalated here. But we have not seen anything officially coming out of CARICOM. I know the Trinidad and Tobago Prime Minister has been speaking out. This morning, I saw a statement from her coming out this morning. I'm going to try to get that for you in just a bit. But the Trinidadian Prime Minister, Kamala Persad-Bissessar, in a statement moments ago, said earlier this morning, the 3rd of January, 2026, the United States commenced military operations within the territory of Venezuela. She said Trinidad and Tobago is not a participant, and she highlighted the not. Trinidad and Tobago is not a participant in any of these ongoing military operations, adding that Trinidad and Tobago continues to maintain peaceful relations with the people of Venezuela. That statement coming from the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, because you know there has been a lot of grumbling in Trinidad and Tobago about whether the U.S. would be using Trinidad and Tobago as an area to launch any strike and any action against Venezuela. Well, the Prime Minister of Trinidad coming out very early and very clearly to say that Trinidad and Tobago is not a participant of these ongoing military operations, also saying Trinidad and Tobago continues to monitor that situation coming out of Venezuela this morning. We're showing you some video that was making the rounds earlier this morning when the strike began in Venezuela. And these are video recordings that were sent out by residents of Venezuela. I know Guyana has the ambassador in Venezuela, Dr. Richard Van Ries Charles. Not sure if he's in Caracas or if he's back home here in Guyana, but I did not see him around that table with the president. So I'm not clear whether he's in Caracas or Guyana. We'll try to get more information on that. But this information is what we're seeing now coming to hand. The U.S. president, as we told you, is expected to host a press conference at around 11 o'clock this morning, he said, in Mar-a-Lago, to talk about this military action that they have taken early this morning against Venezuela, inside Venezuela, and announcing the capture of the Venezuelan president and his wife, and saying they have been flown out of the country. The Venezuelan government, through the defense minister in Venezuela, is saying that they're going to fight this back, and they've been calling on persons to come out. Well, CARICOM has just issued a statement. CARICOM saying the conference of heads of government of CARICOM met very early this morning following reports of military action in Venezuela. CARICOM is actively monitoring the situation, which is of grave concern to the region, with possible implications for neighboring countries. CARICOM will continue to update the people of the region as more information is made available. That coming there from the CARICOM Secretariat. Dr. Carla Barnett is the Secretary General, announcing that there was an early morning meeting of the Conference of Heads of Government of CARICOM. The Venezuelan Vice President, Delcy Rodriguez, has also issued a statement. I'm going to read a part of that for you. She is saying, at this moment, we do not know the place in which the President Nicolas Maduro is, along with his wife. So we are demanding that President Donald Trump produces proof of life of President Nicolas Maduro and also the First Lady. And she posted that via Telesur, which is a Latin America TV network, this morning. So the Vice President of Venezuela, Delcy Rodriguez, this morning saying the Venezuelan government is currently unaware of the whereabouts of the Venezuelan president following his capture by the U.S. early this morning in Caracas, and they're saying he was flown out of the country. So you have the Vice President in Venezuela this morning calling for the U.S. and U.S. President Donald Trump to provide information about him and his whereabouts and proof of life. That coming from the Venezuelan Vice President, Delcy Rodriguez. And as I mentioned, CARICOM just moments ago issued a statement. Going to go over that again for you. The Conference of Heads of Government of CARICOM met very early on the 3rd of January following reports of military action in Venezuela. CARICOM is actively monitoring the situation, which is of grave concern to the region, with possible implications for neighboring countries. CARICOM will continue to update the people of the region as more information is made available. And as I mentioned earlier to you too, President Irfan Ali and the National Security Team meeting early this morning. And he also had a conference with military commanders at various posts in the country. And they have been monitoring the situation in Venezuela and receiving information on that. President Irfan Ali also announcing this morning that he was part of that meeting with the CARICOM Secretary General. He said, we have spoken to the CARICOM Secretary General, and as more information becomes available, we will further update the population. President Ali saying the Defense Board, the leadership of the GDF, that's the Guyana Defense Force, and our security forces are fully mobilized in accordance with our security plans. So we're going to continue monitoring this situation this morning. And as more information becomes available, of course, we're going to share that with you. We've also been monitoring what has been coming out from Al Jazeera and how they've been following this story this morning. They're also reporting on the fact that the Venezuelan president has been captured and taken out of Venezuela. So we have been monitoring that also this morning. The US President Donald Trump announcing that about 2 or 3 hours into the operation. The operation began just after 2 o'clock based on the media reports that we have been receiving. And once an operation began, the US president stated that the US has successfully carried out a large-scale strike against Venezuela and its leader, President Nicolas Maduro, who has been, along with his wife, captured and flown out of the country. Multiple U.S. agencies also reporting on this ongoing situation this morning. I'm going to head across to CBS News and see what they're saying at this hour. Here's what CBS News reports this morning. They're saying President Trump said Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and his wife were captured and flown out of the country. We just told you about that. They're also reporting this morning the U.S. Army's Delta Force, an elite special forces unit, carried out the operation to capture Maduro, officials told CBS News. And CBS News reports the strikes follow months of U.S. military buildup in the region, with the USS Gerald R. Ford aircraft carrier and numerous other warships positioned in the Caribbean. CBS News says in recent weeks, the U.S. has seized 2 oil tankers off Venezuela and launched deadly strikes on more than 30 boats, the administration says, were carrying drugs, and struck what President Trump called the dock area where they load the boats up with drugs. The U.S. carrying out those operations for a number of weeks. And based on what we have been told, is the fact that over 100 persons, suspected drug traffickers, were killed in those attacks. So we're going to continue monitoring this situation. The U.S. Secretary of State, let me bring this up. GOP Senator says Rubio told him no further action in Venezuela expected. CBS News reports now, Republican Senator Mike Lee of Utah said early Saturday that Secretary of State Marco Rubio had told him he anticipates no further action in Venezuela now that Maduro is in U.S. custody. In a post on X, Lee said he spoke with Rubio on the phone. He said he was told Maduro was arrested to stand trial on criminal charges in the U.S. And the kinetic action we saw tonight, this morning, was deployed to protect and defend those executing the arrest warrant. Maduro was captured, by the way, with a 50 million U.S. bounty on him. And that is something, persons have been paying attention to also. The fact that there is this bounty that remains on him. And as we mentioned earlier, he was captured this morning along with his wife, according to the U.S. president, Maduro and his wife being captured. The Venezuelan vice president calling for the U.S. to say exactly where Maduro is. And so we've also been hearing that from them. And so we are, of course, monitoring this situation. Let me head back across to CBS News because they're saying the U.S. government has sought Maduro's arrest for years. He was indicted by a U.S. court in March 2020, accused along with more than a dozen other individuals of narco-terrorism. Last summer, the Trump administration doubled the reward for information leading to Maduro's capture to $50 million. And federal prosecutors alleged in 2020 that Maduro and other senior Venezuelan government officials collaborated with the Colombian guerrilla group, or FARC as they're known, to traffic cocaine and weapons to the U.S. So CBS News also reporting that this morning. The Venezuelan defense minister says the military is being deployed across Venezuela. He said the defense minister is calling for a united front of resistance in face of what he called the worst aggression ever against Venezuela. He said all armed forces would be deployed following Maduro's orders, but made no mention of Maduro's reported capture. And quoting directly that defense minister in Venezuela, his name is Vladimir Padrino Lopez, he said, they've attacked us, but they will not subdue us. He called for calm and unity across Venezuela and warned against anarchy and disorder, cautioning, let's not succumb to the panic that the enemy seeks to instill. Of course, as you know, Guyana would pay close attention to this situation because of the ongoing border conflict that we have with Venezuela. Venezuela has been terribly aggressive to Guyana over the years. And so Guyanese are sitting this one out. We're paying close attention, but many are sitting this one out because over the years, Venezuela, they've been aggressive to Guyana. Guyana has gone to the United Nations. We're currently before the International Court seeking a final juridical settlement of that border controversy. The International Court is dealing with that. Venezuela had initially claimed that they were not going to be a part of that. Then they eventually are part of it. They said they don't recognize the court, but the court said, listen, we're the ones to deal with this. The court ruling that they have the jurisdiction to listen to Guyana's case. And there was the incident where those Venezuelan military ship was out there close to the oil boats within Guyana's waters, those massive oil vessels, and questioning. I know many of us remember that story when they were questioning the captains of those oil vessels within Guyana's waters, those FPSOs and drill ships, questioning them about their location, who gave them permission to be there, and essentially claiming Guyana's maritime space as theirs. And that was a scary moment for those who were on board. Many Guyanese work offshore there, many other international citizens. Of course, Exxon is a US company. So there was great concern about that when the Venezuelan military carried out that exercise. It was a Saturday morning. And they went on and on and on, moving from ship to ship, questioning them for hours. And as you know, Guyana had filed a full complaint to the international agencies. Guyana had also written to the international court, bringing them up to date on that, because the international court had issued that interim order saying there should be no acts of aggression by either parties. Guyana has not been doing that. Venezuela, on the other hand, is another story. And Guyana had also complained about Venezuela is not following that order of the court. And that was one of the main issues Guyana highlighted. Of course, about 2 years ago, right? President Irfan Ali met with the Venezuelan president when there were also these acts of aggression against Guyana. He met with him in St. Vincent and Grenadines, St. Vincent, and they had that meeting that took place at the Argyle airport, and they came up with the Argyle Declaration, where the two sides made a pledge to let peace prevail and not carry out any action. And then Venezuela popped up again, claiming they're going to hold elections for Guyana's Essequibo region. And they went ahead holding those sham elections, as we've been following, and we've been paying attention to those situations. So Venezuela has been very aggressive towards Guyana over the years, over that border controversy, which was settled way back in 1899, but they brought it up again as we were getting independence, and claiming that Essequibo belongs to Venezuela. And Guyana has always been fighting that under different governments. Guyana has always been fighting that. And so I think it was in 2018 under President David Granger that Guyana went to the UN and said, listen, this good offices process that you had ongoing is not moving anywhere. And the next step, the Secretary General said, let's move to the International Court. And so that's essentially what Guyana did under the UN Secretary General. And that's where the case is until now, and continuing before that international court. So Guyana is paying close attention to what is happening across there in Venezuela this morning. As I told you, President Irfan Ali convening an early morning meeting with his security officials. You can see the Prime Minister seated there, along with the National Security Intelligence Chief. The Minister of Home Affairs is also there, and members of the military and other members of the joint services also a part of that early morning meeting. This photo being released from the office of the president. As I mentioned earlier, the president issuing a statement. He told me that we have been monitoring the situation all morning. The priority is the safety and the security of our country, Guyana. And so President Irfan Ali has been paying close attention to what has been happening across there in Venezuela. But the U.S. has announced the capture of the Venezuelan president and his wife. And we've been following many of the updates coming in from CBS News. CBS News reporting moments ago that the GOP senator is saying now that Maduro has been captured, the U.S. will not take any further action in Venezuela. That U.S. senator is saying he spoke with the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and Rubio said to him that Maduro was arrested to stand trial on criminal charges in the United States. And he's saying the action we saw this morning was deployed to protect and defend those who were executing the arrest warrant. The Venezuelan vice president, as we have been reporting, she has been demanding proof of life for Maduro. And that is the story we've been also following this morning. She is saying the Venezuelan government is unaware of where Mr. Maduro is, and they're asking for proof of life. So we have also been following that story. Let me bring back up some video we received early this morning. I know I've been showing it to you almost on repeat, but we're going to bring it up again for you because this is video that we got in early this morning from neighboring Venezuela. And this was sent out by those who are in the heart of it, essentially in Caracas, following these military strikes that the U.S. carried out this morning. Let's listen in a bit. Yeah, and that's a video that has been sent around showing some of the early morning strikes this morning in neighboring Venezuela. Those strikes being launched early this morning, just after 2 o'clock local time, and we have been monitoring that. We're also being told this morning that the Venezuelan government has essentially confirmed the U.S. capture of Maduro. The Venezuela Vice President, Delcy Rodriguez, asking for proof of life this morning. And so we're also following that. The Venezuelan defense minister says huge aerial response incoming. He's also been talking about that situation. And the U.S. military also asking U.S. airlines to avoid the Venezuelan airspace. So that is another story we have also been monitoring this morning, and we've been paying attention to that this morning also. So you don't have any flights flying anywhere close to Venezuela because of this action that has been ongoing. The BBC and other international news agencies have also been reporting on the ongoing situation in Venezuela. And let's listen in a bit to what's coming out of the folks across at Al Jazeera. They've been closely monitoring this.
And this is why I am concerned when the US says this is the end of it and we're out now, but we've taken the president out of the country. That doesn't mean it's the end of the chaos in the country. They need now to start taking responsibility and own up to the responsibility of making this a peaceful transition. To start with, the situation, the economic situation in the country is deteriorating and has been really bad for the last few years, largely because of the sanctions the US has imposed in Venezuela. So that's one area that they need to make action. They need to think of who will take over from him. And is it really about regime change, or is it about ideological change in Venezuela? Are they going to push the whole country to move away from socialism and bring Maria in and try to support her vision? Or are they going to adapt to whatever the military and others that survive now and compromise to a level where they can still be on board? And these are the questions that they faced in the Middle East, and they failed to answer. You know, they ended up with a chaotic situation that ultimately has affected the whole region and not only the one country that they started with. And this is, I think, the lesson that Latin America should look at very, very carefully. Maybe now it looks like attractive to some leaders that we get rid of Maduro, but you won't. If it's a chaotic situation in Venezuela, it's going to come and catch up with you as well. To start with, at least at the level of drug trafficking and drug cultivation and so on, this is going to be the wonderful scenario that drug dealers were waiting for, that it's going to turn closer to what we saw in Afghanistan rather than what they're hoping to have happened or is happening now in Syria.
James, the cliche has always been the British had an empire, but the Americans don't have an empire, but they had the guys that they can rely on. And that was always been the case in South America. And when those guys are no longer useful, violent regime change happens. Sometimes it happens covertly, CIA operations across South America, for example. But this is really overt. They're not pulling any punches anymore, right?
Very, very overt. They have done it in a way that is very unusual. An extraction of one man, okay, yes, his wife as well, but one man, and the rest of the government, the rest of the apparatus, the security apparatus, all is there. We know that it's a very tense situation already in Venezuela because of the economic problems the country's facing, because of an opposition that feels it should be in charge. Which way will the army and the different security services go? Will they all go in the same direction? I think there's a real risk that we could see unrest on the streets of Caracas. That is the nightmare scenario right now. In the US, this will be seen as a wonderful, daring move by President Trump. People will be waking up at their breakfast table, look at our brave president, what he's done. I suspect approval ratings of Donald Trump will go up, but I think you'll have to judge this several months down the line, whether this is actually and maybe even several years down the line, because it sets, as Sultan says, all sorts of precedents about the international system and the way you operate. Yes, the US has broken those rules, the UN Charter, several times, many times before, but I think, again, other powers will be looking, and I think we might now be in an era, not the last 80 years after the World War II, where people did play by the rules.
And coming back with you now, I have joining me on the line, opposition member of parliament, Amanza Wharton Desir. Ms. Desir, thanks for waking up early this morning. And I know, like many of us here in Guyana, we have been monitoring this situation early this morning. We saw President Irfanali meeting with his security team and saying that Guyana is closely monitoring this. CARICOM also putting out a statement on this. Your take on this? Are you surprised by this?
Good morning, Gordon. Yes, we've been up since about 2 this morning monitoring what's unfolding in Venezuela. Surprised? No. I think I've been drawing attention to this eventuality and the concomitant concerns for Guyana. No doubt what is happening in Venezuela is deeply concerning. And Guyana is a small nation in what is now a very tense and unpredictable region. And so our first duty has to be the safety and security of our people and our territory.
How do we do that? Because we know the realities of Guyana and our military and Venezuela. Some persons are concerned that Venezuela, if they're not able to get to the US, they might get to those around. So should we be concerned about that, or should our concern mainly center around whether there will be an influx of persons seeking refuge?
Gordon, we certainly have to be concerned about all of the eventualities. I note that our international partners have very clearly stated that should there be an attack on Guyana in terms of a military attack, that they are prepared to stand shoulder to shoulder with us in defense of our country. But of course, the far more insidious threat, like we've warned before, is this possible incursion of refugees and our related wartime obligations as it relates to providing safe passage and harbor to anyone fleeing conflict. And so certainly we have to be prepared on all fronts. The issue of capacity, should there be an increase in the influx of migrants is certainly one that we have to address our minds to quite urgently.
And I know we were just listening to some coverage by Al Jazeera this morning, and one of the persons offering commentary there was expressing concern about the capture and the removal from Venezuela of the Venezuelan president. Are you surprised by that action? Did you think they were just going to go in and do whatever, or were you surprised that they've actually taken it to this level where they've flown him out along with his wife?
Well, you can't be surprised by any of this anymore. What it, however, signals is a reversal of the rules-based order that we've come to know, particularly after the last World War. And just like the observer observed on the Al Jazeera show, it's a deep concern that with this heralding of this new order, that other states, other larger states, may begin to get ideas as to how they can achieve what they deem to be in their national and best interests. And so certainly the developments are of serious concern. The Caribbean and Latin America as a zone of peace has now been destroyed. And certainly it is a sad day, and it is something that we as Guyanese have to certainly take in stride, and we have to as well guard and craft a national approach to how we deal with this new epoch or era in our region. I think the government has to urgently brief Parliament and brief the nation on at least three critical areas in my estimation. What do we currently know about the situation in Venezuela? And what are the measures being taken to protect our Guyanese citizens at home, along our borders, offshore, etc., and of course abroad in Venezuela? And what are the contingency plans should this crisis escalate, or should it result in humanitarian displacement? I think if Guyanese are reassured that there is a clear plan, it will ensure calm, it will ensure that people do not resort to panic. And I want to encourage the government to keep speaking to the people in the absence of information, conjecture, etc. Usually reigns supreme, and that of course leads to panic, etc. So we have to speak to our Guyanese brothers and sisters. We have to make sure that they're informed, and so that they can be made calm.
And there's also the view, Ms. Walton Desir, that Guyana should completely sit this one out, just monitor and look on from afar. Is that something we can afford to do? Is that something the Caribbean can afford to do? Completely sit it out and allow the U.S. and Venezuela to duke this one out?
Certainly sitting it out. I'm concerned about what that means, because the implications for us are clear and are present. We just discussed one. Heightened migration flows. We have the possibility of, spillover. This is a neighboring territory. And so sitting it out, I am not sure what is meant by that. But to my mind, it is a case of all are involved and all are very, very deeply consumed at this point.
All right, thanks a lot for that this morning. Opposition Member of Parliament, Mansa Walton Desir, talking about that ongoing situation in neighboring Venezuela. Thank you for speaking with us this morning, Ms. Walton Desir. Really appreciate the time and on such short notice too.
You're welcome, Gordon. Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Have a good day. I'm going to go back to what the U.S. president said this morning. U.S. President Donald Trump saying the United States of America has successfully carried out a large-scale strike against Venezuela and its leader, President Nicolas Maduro, who has been, along with his wife, captured and flown out of the country. He's saying that the operation was done in conjunction with U.S. law enforcement, and details will follow. President Irfan Ali has indicated moments ago that he's still meeting with his security officials, and they continue to monitor the situation. But earlier, he told me briefly that we have been monitoring the situation all morning. The priority is the safety and security of our country, Guyana. President Ali also saying the Defense Board, the leadership of the GDF and the security forces are fully mobilized in accordance with our security plans. He said he has spoken also to the CARICOM Secretary General on the issue. The CARICOM Secretary General announcing moments ago that early this morning, they convened a meeting of the CARICOM heads of conference. That's the conference of heads, sorry, the heads of government of CARICOM. They had an early morning meeting. President Ali had his own meeting also with his military top brass and his security top brass, not just military. But the CARICOM Secretary General, in a statement saying they're monitoring the situation, they're of course concerned about it and the threat to what is called the zone of peace in the region. So they have also been monitoring the situation this morning. So CARICOM is saying they will release more information. President Irfan Ali also saying that. And the US president indicating that he's going to hold a press conference a bit later on this morning on the latest on the action by the US military in Venezuela. We're still seeing reports coming in from CBS News. And some of the other media partners are going to head across to the BBC to brief you on what they're saying at this hour. They're also reporting on that large-scale strike on Venezuela. Reporting Caracas describes hearing loud bangs and planes. That's from a BBC reporter inside Caracas. And they've also been following that story closely. And so this is where we are on this Saturday morning. Of course, we will continue to bring you information as that information becomes available to us. We're going to try to make contact with the Guyana ambassador to Venezuela and see if there's any information he can provide to us that we may not have already heard this morning. But as I prepare to sign off for now, the U.S. carried out military action in Venezuela this morning, capturing the Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and also his wife, and the U.S. indicating that they were both flown out of Venezuela and they're in U.S. custody. The CBS News reporting that a U.S. senator has indicated that he spoke with the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and he has indicated that Maduro was arrested and flown out to face those drug charges and other charges that the U.S. they have been talking about. There was an arrest warrant out for Maduro with a $50 million US bounty on his head. And so, of course, we've been focusing on that too. We heard more from the BBC and some of the agencies following that about that situation. So that's the latest from me for now. As I mentioned, President Irfan Ali indicating moments ago that he's still in meetings taking place, and the Guyana is still monitoring this situation in neighboring Venezuela. The Venezuelan government has declared a state of emergency, and the Venezuelan military is saying they're going to strike back. So we're closely monitoring this situation on this Saturday morning. It is the 3rd day of January. And so we're going to continue monitoring this situation. As more information comes to hand, we're going to come back here with you. I'm Gordon Mosley reporting here in Georgetown.